Please can you remind me if you'll be so kind, staring out into space, asking God to hear my case, trying to think of all things past. How long will my memory last? The purple angel, purple angel, purple angel, you're next to me.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm so glad you could join us today, where our focus is to shift dementia care around the world from crisis to comfort. So subscribe today and learn and share new techniques, tips, and resources that will help you live graciously alongside dementia. If you're an individual, a family member, a friend, a corporation, it doesn't make any difference. We have something for you. I'm Lori LeBay, the host of the show, and I'm also a daughter of a mother who lived the path of dementia for 30 years. So I get the guilt, the isolation, the frustration, the exhaustion of caring for another. But I've also been able to find that path of joy, purpose, and passion. So listen in and let us help you find that path of joy. Now, for some of you, you might not realize that September is World Alzheimer's Month. And so with that, we always try, every week we try to bring you great information. But today we're going to be talking on a topic of a new learning method that really helps engage and bring joy to people. But before we go into our topic today, I want to give a couple of shout outs. One is we in Minnesota are doing an airport travel survey, and it closes on the 15th. So it's, this weekend, and then it shuts down, and it targets people with dementia and those that have traveled on a plane. And if you can go to alzheimerspeaks.com, you'll see a big airplane. Just click on it, and it will bring you to the survey. Now, the survey is going to take you probably 30 to 40 minutes. It is long. It's detailed, but we need this information if we're going to try to shift dementia travel in the future. So if you have dementia and if you have traveled with someone, please take the survey, and please feel free to share that with others. I also want to give a shout out to the Memory Cafe directory. Fabulous, fabulous resource for people with early to mid memory loss and their loved ones to be able to go and meet and gather with like-minded parties. Just go to Memory Cafe directory. And then, of course, there's Stall Catchers, which is actually a game that all of us can play. And when we're playing the game, we're actually analyzing real life data in the world of Alzheimer's, and we're pushing research further. So go to stallcatchers.com for further information there. And then if you happen to be a company that's listening and you want to expand your brand footprint by leveraging our content in all our various platforms here on Alzheimer's Speaks, please reach out to me. I would love to talk to you about how we can help you with branding opportunities. And last, I want to invite our listeners to be our guests. Everyone is welcomed on this show. If you're someone living with dementia, if you are a family member, if you are a business, a researcher, an advocate, a movie director, a singer, a songwriter, we've had a little bit of everything here, and we don't want to stop. And we've had all ages of people, so children are welcome too, because many of them are doing some really cool things. So just go to alzheimerspeaks.com. There's a big contact button. Reach out to me, and I will be more than happy to connect with you. You can also join us in the conversation today by calling in at 323-870-4602. That's 323-870-4602. And I'll see you pop up in the studio, and we'll pull you in for a comment. And last, I just, again, want to thank our audience. Your likes, your clicks, your shares have just expanded our our footprint all around the world, and we couldn't have done that without you. So thank you so much for your help at connecting people to the resources, products, and tools that they so so surely deserve and need, and so that they can make their own decisions for their own unique family situations. Now, as I said, we're going to be talking about a new learning method today called SAIDO, and we are lucky to have with us Jill Richter, who is the Director of Operations for SAIDO Learning. She has experienced SAIDO firsthand as a daughter of someone with Alzheimer's disease, and she saw what that did for her own father. She also saw what it did for other residents and family members in long-term community care where he lived, as well as the staff and the entire community. I have been lucky enough to go out and actually be able to see this in person and in action, and was very impressed as well. Now, after Jill's experience with her own family, she became a passionate advocate for people with cognitive decline, and she joined the SAIDO Learning team in order to bring as many people across the country together with this. SAIDO is one thing that we can do right now to interrupt what we have come to expect with dementia. So SAIDO really impacts lives greatly, and I'm just thrilled to have Jill with us. So welcome, Jill. How are you doing today?
Hi, Lori. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here with you. I'm doing really well. Thanks.
Well, good. It's been a while since we've chatted, and but I need you, if you don't mind, just to set up for our audience. If you can tell people a little bit about your personal experience with dementia. I had mentioned a family member had that. Are there any details that you're willing to share about that experience with our audience?
Oh, gosh. Absolutely. You know, I always say that I didn't pick SAIDO, it picked me. And that sort of happened because of my journey. You know, like so many others, dementia sneaked in and snatched a loved one. And as you mentioned, it was, in my case, my father. You know, here's this guy who had a full, vibrant life, you know, high school athlete, college president, or class president, World War II pilot, father of 6. I could go on and on. Probably his favorite thing was that he was a darn good golfer. But, you know, he started to decline, and it's easy to look back now, right? But you don't know what you don't know. And so there were plenty of signs along the way that he was having these changes. But all of a sudden, some things really start to stand out. You know, he started to, get lost going to the high school football field where he had gone for his, you know, many years, or his frustration or anger was off the charts. And it just, you know, we're chalking that up to just him being older until there was one day when he came to the door of my house. My folks lived about 3.5 miles from me. And here I am. I have a, you know, career. I have my children I'm raising, but I'm in the kitchen cooking dinner. And the doorbell rings. So ding dong, I go to the door. It wasn't unusual for my dad to be there. And I answer the door. I'm like, hey, Dad. Like, hey, honey, and he gives me a hug, and he hands me this bag, which was treats for my girls, you know, and not the, you know, championship food to be eating, but their treats were Swiss cakes and Oreos. And so he hands me this bag, and I'm like, oh, thanks, Dad, and gives me a kiss. He goes, give them to the girls, give them a hug, and is your mother here? And I said, no, Dad, she's not here. And he's like, okay. So off he went. And I go back into the kitchen, and I'm cooking dinner again, and not 10 or 15 minutes later, the doorbell rings. And I go to the door and answer it, and there's my dad, and it's like Groundhog Day. He had run to the store, gotten the treats again, and he hands them to me, and it was, Lori, it was like the same conversation. Like, hi, honey. Well, hi, Dad. Hands to me, you know, give them the girls. Is your mother here? And at that point, we lock eyes, and it was like there was this knowing. You know, there was this knowing that something was going on that was, you know, deeper than any of us had been able to recognize. And after that, it's the classic things that we saw with him. And even though he was still at home with my mother, there was a point at which we really couldn't keep up. And so that's where he and my mom moved into an assisted living. And they had, good memory care, just a good, solid place to live. But here I am, the daughter, and the president and CEO of the organization comes, and she's talking about this new program for dementia, and it's called SAIDO Learning. And I remember sitting in the back row as the daughter, kind of rolling my eyes, thinking I knew everything there was to know and that there really wasn't any hope because the drugs weren't working, and there were great programs, but nothing really that was helping. And so I listened, and after that kind of left thinking, well, probably couldn't hurt. So I talked to my brother, and, we decide that why not? It can't hurt him. So my dad starts SAIDO Learning, and I don't think about it because, again, I'm busy with the girls and I'm working and so on. And fast forward a few weeks later, it's probably about 4 to 6 weeks, Lori, I think, and we had a big dinner in their assisted living apartment. So for them, that wasn't unusual, big Italian family. In my world, more people, more food. We have this big table stretched out. And at that point, my dad really wasn't engaging with anyone. And I'm serving up the pasta. Out of the corner of my eye, I look over and I see my dad, and he's grabbing the cake plate. It was his birthday. So there's this big cake plate. He grabs the cake plate. So first of all, he makes a decision, of something he's interested in. So I thought, wow, that's interesting. Pulls it towards him, cuts a piece of cake, slides it on his plate, takes one bite out of it, looks at me, and has the biggest grin on his face. And Lori, I know that seems pretty insignificant, but for those of us who have walked this road, you know that when you see your person is in there, it's a huge moment in your life because it's heartwarming. And so I thought, well, what have we changed here? Because something different is going on. And I thought, nothing other than that SAIDO thing. So I thought, well, I better pay attention to this. So I went to some sessions. I started talking to other family members and learned that they had seen changes. And I noticed relationships changing with staff, that they knew him more deeply, and I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. And even like the maintenance supervisor of the community would stop by and say, hey, Leo, and he chatted up a bit about things he knew about my dad. And he wouldn't have known those things if he hadn't been doing sessions because he had the opportunity to get to know him more deeply. And that transferred off to my mother. And, as a daughter, along with her siblings who had to put her parents into a long-term care community, what could be more comforting? So I saw all these changes happening, and that's when I learned that the organization's gotten a license to take this across the country. And I thought, this matters. This is something we can do now. It provides hope. And I knocked on their door, and they had me, and here I am. So that's a long answer to your question about my experience, how SAIDO picked me. I didn't pick it.
Well, you've alluded to SAIDO and the reference of it, but why don't you tell us what it actually is? What is the product, and how do they engage people with dementia? Can you kind of draw us a picture of that, and maybe tell us where it came from too, where it originated from?
Okay, sure. Well, first of all, it comes from Japan. The Japanese have been doing SAIDO since 2001. And after about 10 years, they thought, gosh, this is working well. I wonder if it'll work cross-culturally. So they came to the U.S. looking for a partner so that they could do a trial. And after a while, the organization I worked for at the time raised their hands and said, you know what, we'll do this with you. And they said, okay, if you're serious about this, come on over to Japan and check it out. So they did. The powers that be went over to Japan. They checked it out and thought, this is something. We don't see anything like this in the U.S. So they came back and they started a trial here. And after it was supposed to be a 6-month trial, and about a month in, they said, wow, we see some changes. You can't take this away from us. It would almost be criminal, So they were able to get the license, a master license, to have it here in the U.S. at their community. Well, then they realized that they couldn't just keep it here, so that's when they began to spread it, have the opportunity to spread it across the country. So it's from Japan. They've been doing it since 2001. It's been here in the U.S. for several years, and that's the origins of it. So now, what is it? What is SAIDO?
Yeah.
And it's funny when people ask me, I often find myself pausing because I'm asked that question because it offers so much. But really, when I think about SAIDO, I think about I think about life, it's like an infusion of living into this often complicated and challenging condition. It's a program, but it's really a method. And the method is for dramatically impacting and improving quality of life for people, adults with cognitive challenges. So we're not curing anything, certainly, but we see a better way of living and managing dementia. So with it is a combination of cognitive training and engagement. It's non-pharmacological, so no drugs. It's based on a learning intervention I mentioned from Japan, and it provides mental exercises and really, enhanced individualized engagement. And that method, the way it's done, well, first let me give you some terminology. We use language like learners and supporters. So learners are the participants, the people with dementia, and supporters are anyone facilitating the session. And sometimes I think that gets confusing because it sounds so academic, but it's not. It's, we use worksheets, math and reading and so on, and it sounds, again, academic, but it's purely exercises. It's just the method or the gateway to get to the outcomes of what we need. But the session itself, there's the supporter who's trained to work with the learners, and they engage the learners in a series of math, reading, and writing exercises. It's done 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, and the beauty is that it's tailored to a person's individual level of ability. So the goal is not to teach that material, but to engage. And we look for the sessions themselves to be successful and allow the person to progress at their own pace. So the idea is that it gives people confidence, and it often results in improved abilities and quality of life. I guess what else I could tell you is these exercises are designed really to maximize engagement. And I talk about something called the just right level, because with SAIDO there's 1,080 reading worksheets and 1,080 math worksheets and various other ways that we individualize it. And so this just right level gives a person the feeling of, gosh, I can do this. I can probably do more. Because I don't know about you, when there's something that's too hard, you might get through it once, but you don't want to come back and do it again too often. And if it's too simple, it's almost like, it's not on your radar. But if you feel like, I can do a little more, people are often return and want to do it again. So that's where SAIDO is placed for each person.
Okay.
So does that give you an idea?
Yeah, I know when I went and observed, the thing that kind of caught my eyes and my heart both were the fact that both the learners and the supporters were happy to be there. I mean, there were smiles. It wasn't something like, for staff, like, oh, we got to get through this now. This is even though it's a structured activity, they didn't come carrying a burden that, oh, now I'm going to be behind in my other work because now I have to do this. And in talking with the supporters or the ones that facilitate the learners, they also expressed to me how much they enjoyed it because they got to learn about the individual that was there.
Yeah,
and
I'm so glad you saw that.
Yeah, and you could see that there was a real true connection, amongst them. And then for the learners, the people with dementia, they came in with smiles on their faces and high fives to one another. And if somebody was missing, they knew, where's Joe?
Yeah.
Oh, they're here. They're not going to want to miss this,
Yeah.
And then when the time was up, people slowly left. They weren't in a big rush to leave, and there were hugs being given, and you could just see, as an observer, you could just see that boost in confidence. Even if somebody came in maybe a little more sluggish, by the end of the session, they were feeling really good about themselves. And like you said, this just right level just breeds that level of confidence. And when you have, when any of us have that sense of confidence, we have that sense of belonging and purpose. And I mean, there's just so many different levels that jot out of it. that are pretty incredible to be able to see. I also, when I was there, I did see one family member and asked them, what they thought of the process, and they just said it was like night and day, with their loved one, and how much they could see the difference in the confidence and the social engagement and the pride that they walked and talked with after a session, which was really, really cool. Now, can you tell us, as far as these supporters and as far as the learners too, how are they picked, and is there cost to participate in this, and how does all of that work?
So right now, SAIDO is done in where it started, which was long-term care communities. And I think the purpose behind that was because that way people are able to get the sessions 5 days a week. It's like going to the gym, Laura. When you go consistently, you get the results. And it's not about being in the gym and what you're doing there. You have to do the work. It's about how you feel the rest of the day, your strength, your stamina, and all that. Same thing with SAIDO sessions. So if they're done consistently, then it's about the other 23 and a half hours of the day and what that day looks like. And so that's why it started in long-term care. We also have SAIDO Learning Centers now. There's a 4-day-a-week program where people can come in from their homes because there's so many people living at home who want to stay at home. So there's an opportunity to do it there. So how are the supporters chosen? In a long-term care community, it's those that step forward and say, I want to be a part of this. And they are able to get trained. So it's a full day of training for someone who wants to become a supporter, and they're trained in dementia. They're trained in approach. They're trained in how to have positive conversations, how to help a person recognize what they can do versus what they can't. So all of this is part of their training, and then they learn the specifics of a session, because with SAIDO, it's not just another program. There's quality assurance. It has to be done in a certain way. Even though it's individualized, there's purpose behind the way it's delivered and how it's done in that session. And so that's why there's training and ongoing quality assurance to those sessions, right, for the supporters. And then you get to see what you saw was the joy of the outcomes, and the joy of attending. And sometimes the staff members in the community, no matter what department they work in, from maintenance to dining to whatever it might be, oftentimes they say, even though they're busy like crazy, because in long-term care there's not a lot extra time, they say it's the best part of my day. And I think it's probably because what you're saying, this engagement opportunity. How often do we get to sit down for somebody for 30 to 40 minutes, lock eyes, tell stories, and learn about them? Pull information out, reminisce, talk about new things. And that's the joy of it. So those folks come from all different departments within the organization. And again, it's those that step forward and say, I want to be a part of this.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Now, we've talked a little bit about the benefits, but I would imagine you probably have some stories that can show some examples of some of the benefits.
Yeah. Because of that number of worksheets I talked about and how we individualize, we can reach people at all stages of cognitive impairment. And so for people who are either at home or in independent living or, wherever they're living that are early on, things that they'll say to me and to others is, I feel sharper. I feel more confident. I'm not as afraid. I've gone back to having lunch with my friends. It really opens up people's worlds because sometimes, you start to your world gets a little bit smaller. And so it's opening up worlds again, at least that's how they describe it. There was a woman that I knew who her friends had said she had lived in independent living and then moved into assisted living and had some decline and so on. And she had started going back to lunch with her friends. And I remember them saying, I don't know what you're doing to Barbara, but keep doing it because she's not repeating so much and she's a lot of fun again. And I thought that was just brilliant, how great quality of life for her, and so there's that. And then there's the opposite end of the spectrum where someone's pretty far along where where you could see eye contact again and that person more comfortable in their skin. That's another joy. But another woman had told us, a family member, those are also great stories because it brings joy to family members too. You and I both know what it's like to walk this road. And you know that when your loved one is doing well and they're engaged or they're happy, it just makes you happy. And so a woman was telling me about how she used to love playing board games with her mom. And her mom had sort of been lost that ability to play. And after starting SAIDO, they were able to do that together again. And to her, that just mattered so much. Or another gentleman down in Cincinnati who told me, although he could talk to his wife and she could, respond, she hadn't initiated conversations in a really long time. And right before I got into town, he told me that she had initiated a conversation, and he was almost in tears telling me this, that it just meant so much to him to have her initiate. And it was after she had started SAIDO. And so it's the little things that seem to make so much difference in people's lives. I could go on and on about stories that we see and hear all the time, but there's another simple story, which is, and this was over in Colorado, and it was a woman's mom where the staff had been doing everything for her at this point, and including choosing the food she was eating. And her mom had been a chef and loved food and knew everything about food and all that, but she had lost either the interest or the ability to choose on her own. And after starting SAIDO, she had asked for a menu, and she began ordering and picking out her food again. So you see those simple things, those simple stories. Probably the biggest story that I have, and it's so individual for everybody, but there was a woman in Fostoria, Ohio, who had entered the community with pretty severe dementia, and she was living in the skilled memory unit. And they had started, the family had started SAIDO, and her mom had shown such improvement that the staff told her, you might want to consider having her move to assisted living. And so they were nervous about that, but they did. They moved her to assisted living, and she thrived there and continued SAIDO, and they had actually considered moving her home, but she was so very happy where she was at that she stayed. But that was that was probably the biggest example of a change for her in that experience. So, Lori, I could go on and on with things that I see or people, what they tell me. And I walk through communities and people stop me and want to tell me what it's done for them or their families. So it's a joy to have something we can do to provide hope.
It's great. I don't know. Well, you probably have run across this where it's all over the news where Dr. Oz's mother has dementia. And he talks in the video about they lost their family truth because they all saw these little changes, but nobody really wanted to dive in and deal with them as a reality. And so, typically we hear people calling that denial, but I love that they lost their truth. I that phrase just sticks with me. But then there's that other side where I think sometimes people accept what they're told is going to happen and that there's no hope. Yeah. There is no cure. Yeah. There is, this is a downward spiral, and they miss the opportunities to connect because they thought that they misstepped so much that now they're going to believe the experts, and the experts aren't always right, guys. There's every person out there is different. Every family, every situation is different, and so never give up on the hope of the connection. Never stop trying new things because what might work for Jill's dad or my mom might not work for the person that you're dealing with, or vice versa. That doesn't mean that it's good or it's bad. It just means that it didn't work in that moment. And so I think when you see something like SAIDO, which is a very different concept, and the other concept I really liked about this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding was this was for all levels of staff to be facilitators. And so you got people in different realms, from administration to secretaries to maintenance and housekeeping. It wasn't just activities. It was everybody at every level really getting to know one another. And I think to me that's one of the saddest things that's missing. And I think it's a brilliant piece that's incorporated in this learning level, because it's just easier to work in an environment when you know people at a real human level, not just a tick list of this is what you have to do for them and this is the schedule, but to be able to recognize sadness in their eyes, or that glint of joy, or whatever it might be, those nonverbals that they're giving off. You're slowing down and in the moment and really recognizing and accepting those things, and then using the power of that knowledge to improve the situation. If they're happy, that's great. That's explosive. I mean, and I saw that when I walked into the room. One person could just change the tone of the room because they were excited and they were having fun, and then all of a sudden other people, it almost got into I want to say, it's not a competition, but it was like a friendly competition of, well, if she can have fun, I can have fun too. type thing. And
I don't know, Lori, if you knew when you were there, but that same community now has students every year that come from a local high school for volunteer hours, and they've returned every year because of their experience the first year. And the beauty of those high school students coming there, imagine this, how much those residents love seeing those young people coming in, and they're trained and they do sessions and they start getting take ownership of their person. This is my person. They come and they do their sessions once a week in the community. And, at the end of the year, their sort of exit interview, I guess, some of them said, gosh, it's not so scary. Or I don't have grandparents, and this allowed me to be around older people, and I like them. Or another one said, I might consider a career with older adults, geriatrics. I mean, how beautiful is that, to open up the world that way? In another state, another community, we have college students coming from Loyola University to a long-term care community. Same thing. They were going to do this one time. It was, one outreach that they were doing. And these students were so impacted by the older adults and people with dementia that the next group is coming back to do it. So it's spreading out into, not only the staff in the local community, but young people out there too, or volunteers to be trained and come in and do it. It's very meaningful and purposeful volunteer work.
Oh, definitely. And I love the intergenerational, and the fact that you don't, have to be a licensed per se. You don't have to have a certificate other than the training for the SAIDO. Don't get me wrong there, but you don't. It's not that medical model of ABC, because I think, this is what I've been told by so many people with dementia, is they're tired of being looked at as a medical model. They're tired of being looked at like a guinea pig to see if this will work. And they really are craving that relationship. Not that they don't mind being in trials and that they don't mind pushing stuff along. They just don't want to be viewed as a little rat in a cage. They want to have a human connection in this process. And as sad as that sounds, that does happen out there with some things that are taking place. And granted, we have made huge strides just in the last 5 years. But guys, we are so far behind the 8 ball. Those huge strides, they're just teeny steps, really, in terms of where we need to go. And working worldwide, you see that. You see the possibilities of the
my
change.
Gosh, there's so many. Right. And, part of my passion, Lori, is just to reduce the stigma of this disease, because there are so many possibilities, because there's hope, because of things like what you said. Don't just sit back and, not try things. I mean, I had an executive director coin something that I love. Amanda out in Illinois, she said, there's this epidemic of low expectations for people with dementia. And I thought, oh my gosh, it's true, but it doesn't need to be that way. There are so many possibilities of full lives, vibrant lives. We want that till the end. And there are things we can do. So I'm with you. Don't just sit back. Try these things. There's lots of things out there, but of which one I see, because it's my world, and I see these great outcomes with SAIDO. But there's many things to expose yourself to versus just the medical model of things.
Yeah, and not that we don't need the medical model, don't get me wrong, folks, but we need a balance, and we're hearing a cry for that, and that cry is getting louder and louder of cure versus care. Care versus care. We have to balance that out, and that is a great phrase, that epidemic of low expectations, because our words matter. And when I go out and speak and train, I talk about how our words affect our outcomes in real subtle ways that we don't even know is happening. Right. And one of them, one of the words is the word behavior. And behavior is just a reaction. It's nobody wants to be told they have a behavior, and yet we all watch for the behaviors because we've been told that things are going to change, and yet behaviors are negative. You're not, if you have a great skill, you're not told you have a good behavior. You're told, you're told you've got a great skill set. And, behaviors, get in the corner, go in time out. You need to adjust, tone down, whatever it is. And I think that's one of the things that's nice with SAIDO is some of those reactions that we have learned to accept are changed, and they're morphed, and you see this joy come out. And to me, when you can hit that spot of joy, no matter how big or little it is, like you said when you were talking about your own dad, that's a moment that you just don't forget. I mean, because it's not just captured in your mind, but it's captured in your heart, and you actually feel joy. When you see someone else joyful, and it spreads.
Oh my gosh, it's transferable, yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes I think we think that just the negative is transferable and can change a room, but joy and kindness can do the same. And I saw the people joking back and forth in terms of when they were getting graded and how they tell people how they kind of grade things, because it was kind of funny watching them react and stuff to that.
You mean in the SAIDO session?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So imagine these worksheets, right? You're reading out loud, you're doing worksheets, you're doing math, and there's worksheets. So it does seem academic, and there's a red pen involved. Again, it feels more academic, especially here. But what you do is you bring the sheets back to you as the supporter, and you're drawing a circle on each sheet. So you're recognizing the work that the person has done, and then each time a person gets 100. And so no matter what, if they've missed something, if they didn't add correctly, because again, it's not academic, it's recognizing what people, the effort that they put in it. It's like dignity. I recognize the time you took to focus on this and put your attention on it, and I want to recognize you and, for 100% effort in what you have done. And so, but they get such a kick out of seeing these 100s on their worksheets, and then there's a lot of praise and encouragement with that. And then going back to something you said, I want to point out, another piece I love about SAIDO is that in the training that transfers to the residents and such, they're looking for what people can do versus what they can't. So what they still are able to do and building on that versus decline. And who wouldn't want that? And who wouldn't want to be told, great job, or thanks for what you've done, in an intimate situation where there's you and another resident and a supporter. It's just a beautiful moment in the day that, again, as you say, brings joy. It feels really good to be told, great job, look at what you've done, awesome work, you rock, all those things. So it really takes people to a different level in their day, and then it transfers out. And then they it impacts another person they come in contact with. So it's a really beautiful model. And in the training of having staff consider, hey, be on the lookout for what these folks can do versus what they can't.
Yeah. And again, it's not about the right or wrong model, or having to do it a certain way. It's about participating and engagement,
right?
Which is very, very cool. Now, if let's say that we've got a listener out there and goes, wow, we need to bring this into my community. What's their next step? And then what's the process as a whole?
So I would say if there was somebody who was interested to talk with, if they wanted to talk with the folks at the community, they're welcome to contact me. My information is on your site. And that's really the way to go about it. They can call me and ask questions, or someone from within the community, the executive director, whatever that might be. And then we talk about it. And really what we do is we walk someone through, have them come to one of our model communities or one of our communities in the area so that they can observe and see what this is all about and determine if it's right for their community and their residents. And then there's a process once they bring it on, because it's not just like, here you go, goodbye. There's a lot of training involved as far as implementation goes and so on. So it's easy best way is to start, just give me a shout. We can talk more about what the next steps would be.
Okay. I don't know if it's possible to talk at all in pricing, or if that varies depending on the size of the community and the extent of the training, or are there standard packages that people look at with that?
It's standard. So it's from Japan. It's a licensed product. So the community would pay the fee for it to be done, and then there is a fee for the participant, and so that would be talked about from that community or whatever it might be. But yes, there is a fee with SAIDO right now.
Okay, and then is it possible, or has anybody ever gotten grants to maybe offset either the cost for licensure or the cost to residents? Has that been something that's been looked into at all for people starting up?
Absolutely. In fact, that's in process right now, because there's some government grants available for the betterment of life for our older adults and for people with dementia. And so the communities are starting to get involved in writing some of those grants and applying for it. I don't have a community right now that's walked that process to the nth degree and have actually done it, but except for there's a few little grants that people have gotten, or they've reached out and gotten so many of us are touched by this disease, so there are those folks who want to support the communities or give a scholarship within a community for a person to participate in SAIDO, and they've donated funds for people to be able to do that. So really more private donations. That has happened quite often. But the grant process has really just begun, and there are several communities in the works to do that. And I say, gosh, let's find the funds.
Yeah, exactly. Now, is this have they done any research in terms of, shift for the person with dementia? So is there any research backing, or is it just kind of, from what I saw, it was pretty black and white. It was kind of like hard not to see the change in people from when they walked out to when they left. But again, that isn't research based. That's just moi. Right.
So there's a lot of qualitative material out there from basically what you and I are talking about and what occurs in the sessions, because after each session there's comments that are written so you can watch the progress of the person along the way, and also there's some diagnostic testing, and that's part of how we get a person in their just right level is through our diagnostic testing and such. So there's the records that we keep. There's the original trial that was done at Eliza Jennings in Cleveland, Ohio with the Japanese when it first came to the U.S., so that's in 2011. And then there's a lot of Japanese research that we have, but we are looking currently at potential research projects through several institutions, and that we have not started that yet, but that's something that we're looking forward to have here in the U.S. So we have plenty of Japanese data, but we do not have the U.S. data other than the original trial.
Okay. Well, the reason I asked is I have been in contact with Lenny, who's the executive director at the World Dementia Council, and I'll be posting this probably later this week, but they've got a survey out, and they are trying to find out really who has researched what's working in dementia-friendly initiatives. And so I think this would be something that you guys would definitely want to take part in, because and like I told him, I said, it sounds great. I said, but I think we've got a lot of great programs, but many of them, we don't have funding over here to barely get the programs off the ground, let alone to, get a research, project behind it. And that's something that they're looking at, seeing, how do we work with that? How do we all work together and get some funding for that effort? And I see SAIDO being a great opportunity for them, even just to, get the word out of what they're doing, when they gather their data and stuff with that. So, well, Jill, is there anything that we haven't covered with SAIDO that you'd like to mention?
I think we have really covered a lot of ground. I guess my heart is in this because of that whole concept of hope that it provides. A possibility. Certainly, we're not curing anything, but it's one good way to add to the quality of life. It's not over till it's over. So this is one road to go, and I've seen so many positives to come out of it. So for anybody who's interested, like I said, give me a call. I'm happy to share more, and I just appreciate your time, Lori. This is a treat. Any day that I get to talk about SAIDO is a good day. So thanks for that.
Well, you said, there's not a cure out there, but you are really elevating hope. Yeah. And to me, hope is a big piece of that puzzle of cure, because, there's the medical cure, and then there's our kind of heart, soul, and brain cure of how are we going to stand in this? How are we going to look at this? How are we going to deal with this? And so to me, you're making a shift in terms of raising awareness, in terms of the possibilities of engagement, the possibilities of living well, the possibilities of just creating a smile on somebody's face or a glint in the eye. Those are big, huge things that should never, ever be underestimated in my world anyways. I think they are just as critical to push forward as a cure, because we need that balance in the meantime. And a cure is probably going to be a ways out there, because they keep changing directions on what's the cause, and there's probably multiple causes of this, because there's so many different types of dementia that they're finding. But in the meantime, we still have to be able to live. People have the right to live in their own personhood and in their own communities, and feel like that they belong and are accepted and fit in. And so often that's not the case.
And I love how you said that. It's really about living well all our days. And this helps us to live well. And, like the woman I told you about going back to lunch with her friends, that is such a delightful story. And to hear it from them and laughing and the joy on their faces, that's, to me, SAIDO. Yeah. Living well in that way. So thanks for pointing that out. It's really true. It's a different kind of cure for life, for living.
Great. Now, people can get a hold of Jill by going to SAIDOlearning.com, and that's SAIDO Learning.com, SAIDO Learning.com. or you can get her at J.T. Richter, and that's RICKER, at SAIDOlearning.com. And her phone number is 216-905-0296. That's 216-905-0296. And again, thank you so much for being with us, Jill. I do see I've got somebody on the line, and I'm just going to see if by chance they have a question before we wrap up. So let me see here. I see we've got somebody online at a 4312 number. Did you have a question or a comment?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. And what's your name, please?
My name is Janet Sowinski, and I live in Columbus, Ohio. I worked as a speech language. Hi. A great presentation, Jill. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Janet.
I worked as a speech language pathologist over 40 years with adults and geriatric people in nursing homes, home health, hospitals, etc. And this is so by far the best treatment for people with dementias, Alzheimer's, vascular dementia. I mean, it's sort of like a miracle product, I guess you'd say.
Wow. Oh, wonderful.
Thank you, Janet.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for this presentation. It was fantastic. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Well, that's always nice to hear that someone, especially who is part of the medical model, sees the value of this too. That's very, very cool. So again, you can reach out to Jill at SAIDOlearning.com. Jill, did you have another comment you wanted to make?
Oh, she mentioned she was a speech language pathologist, and it's interesting because I do hear often from them when they see SAIDO, just their response to it and value in it, because not only are people participating in the session, they're reading out loud, and the voice piece that starts to get lost is, the exercises are there for them too. So just that.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you again, Jill. Really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. This is a great product. I highly encourage people, to check out SAIDO. Again, go to SAIDOlearning.com, or you can always call Jill at 216-905-0296, or you can email her at jtrichter@SAIDOlearning.com. I want to thank our audience again for listening to the show today. We really appreciate you joining us here at Alzheimer Speaks, again, where our focus is to shift dementia care around the world from crisis to comfort. If you haven't subscribed, I highly recommend that you do that so that you can continue to learn about new techniques, tips, and resources to help you live graciously alongside dementia. And again, don't forget to share this episode. Thanks so much. Till next time. Bye now.
Hi, everyone. This is Meredith from the Senior Fitness with Meredith podcast, where I discuss all things for seniors, from fitness, your health and wellness journeys, how to be all over strong and beyond. I also have my mini podcast called Motivation with Meredith. It's a great, quick motivational pick-me-up for your days. Join me, listen now, search for Senior Fitness with Meredith on your favorite podcast platform.